It started with the silence, the kind that follows a storm, but not the kind that comes from peace. The silence that surrounded Madame Assétou was not gentle. It was a sharp, cutting stillness that filled the corridors of Lycée Moderne d'Abobo every time she passed. Girls went quiet. Boys stared. Teachers paused mid-sentence. Mothers whispered behind their hands. Fathers narrowed their eyes like judges watching a criminal walk free. No one ever said it to her face, not in the beginning. But Assétou knew. She had felt it all her life, but never like this. Never like the first time she walked into that school with a chalkboard marker in her hand and a prayer in her heart, only to be met with gazes that stripped her more than words ever could. Assétou was brilliant. That was never in question. She had graduated top of her class from Université Félix Houphouët-Boigny with a degree in mathematics and education. Her mind worked like clockwork, precise and sharp. Her students in the city had once fought over who would get to sit in the front row during her lessons. She made algebra feel like storytelling, geometry like a song. She could explain quadratic equations using the rhythm of Zouglou music and relate probability to the way plantains ripened in the sun. But none of that mattered here. Not in this forgotten corner of Abidjan where the schoolyard was a battlefield, and her body, her natural, God-given body, was the weapon they said was too dangerous to be around children. She wore baggy dresses now. Not just loose, baggy. Like tense. Like she was trying to disappear inside herself. Most days, she layered 2 or 3 scarves around her shoulders to blur the shape of her chest. Her bras were tight enough to leave red marks along her ribs, compressing her until she could barely breathe by third period. Still, it wasn't enough. The whispers continued. They said her breasts were too big to teach, one parent hissed to another at the school gate, as if her existence was some kind of infection their children might catch. "She is a distraction," said one senior male teacher to the principal when he thought the door was closed. "Even I find it hard to focus when she walks past." No one asked her what she thought. No one asked how it felt to stand in front of a classroom filled with eyes that didn't see her mind, only the curve of her chest. No one cared that she hadn't worn lipstick in months, that she pinned her hair back so tightly her scalp ached by nightfall, or that she hadn't smiled since the day she arrived. Assétou tried to focus on her students. There were still moments of joy, when Awa finally grasped the concept of angles, when Kofi stopped skipping school because he didn't want to miss her lessons. But those moments were shrinking. The noise was growing. Rumors spread like wildfire in the market stalls outside the school walls. Some mothers began pulling their daughters from her class. "She's setting a bad example," they said. "She wants to show off. She's too proud of her body." Others were worse. "I heard she was sleeping with the senior boys," one voice said on a moto taxi ride she overheard. "I heard she was paid to teach like that. Some kind of temptation sent from Satan," said another. It wasn't just the students and parents anymore. The principal, Monsieur Doumbia, had begun to act cold. He no longer looked her in the eye. He assigned her the worst classrooms, the ones with broken fans and flickering lights. He moved her schedule around so she had fewer hours, and most of them in the late afternoon when the heat was unbearable. Then came the meeting. It was late, 6:42 p.m. The sky was heavy with the orange and purple of Abidjan sunset, and the last students had gone home. The staff room smelled of chalk dust and sweat. Assétou sat across from Monsieur Doumbia, a clipboard in her lap, her fingers trembling under the table. She already knew something was wrong. She had seen the letter peeking from his folder when she entered, a disciplinary warning, stamped with the school district's seal. "We've had more complaints," he said slowly, deliberately, like each word was being weighed on a scale. "From parents, from teachers, even from board officials who visited." Assétou didn't speak. She stared at the poster behind him. "Education is the key to freedom," and waited. "You are intelligent, Madame Assétou. Gifted even," he continued. "But we cannot continue like this. Your presence has become too disruptive." "My teaching?" she asked, voice barely audible. "No," he said, pausing. "Your appearance." She felt her throat tighten. But still, she said nothing. "I spoke with the regional office," he went on, now leaning in. They suggested a few options. Maybe transfer again, or you consider a surgical solution. Just reduction. For the sake of professionalism. The words hung in the air like smoke. She could feel them wrapping around her neck. Otherwise, he said, finally looking into her eyes, I will be forced to let you go. He stood up, not waiting for her response. As he turned to leave, Assétou slowly reached into her bag and clicked stop on the small recorder hidden under her shawl. She had known this day would come. She had felt it approaching like a storm gathering behind glass. That night, she didn't cry. She walked home through the alleyways of Abobo, her scarf fluttering in the dusty wind, her chest heaving not from shame, but from fury. As she sat on her bed in her small one-room apartment, she opened her laptop. She uploaded the audio. She wrote nothing in the caption, only posted it to her private Facebook and locked her phone. She didn't sleep. By morning, her name was everywhere, and her pain was no longer just hers. By the time Assétou stepped into the school compound the next morning, the heat in the air was not just from the sun. People were staring. Again. But this time, not with lust. Not with judgment. There was something else behind their eyes now. Fear, curiosity, respect. She walked with her books hugged tightly to her chest, her scarf falling over her shoulders as always. But something inside her had shifted. Something in her steps, in her silence, in the way she did not look away from the staring eyes. Not today. Overnight, the audio from the meeting with Principal Doumbia had exploded across social media. It had started small, a few shares from friends and old classmates. Then someone posted it to Twitter, adding only one sentence. This is how they punish brilliant women in Africa. By midnight, it had crossed into WhatsApp groups, teachers, students, journalists. And by morning, it was on the front page of Abidjan Matin, right next to a photo of Assétou's face, taken from a staff profile picture, with the bold headline, Female teacher told to reduce breasts or lose job. In the article, her name was fully printed. Her voice in the recording was clear, calm, but hurt. The principal's voice was even clearer. Assétou didn't say anything to anyone that morning. She walked straight to her classroom, unlocked the door, and began writing on the board. But behind her, students were murmuring. Not laughing, not joking, just murmuring. A few girls looked at her with wide eyes. One of them, Miriam, finally raised her hand and said in a soft voice, Miss, you are strong. Assétou turned. Her marker stopped in her hand. She looked at the girl, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. That smile was all the confirmation Miriam needed. She stood up from her seat, lifted her phone, and said, Can I take a photo with you? Assétou hesitated, just for a second. But then she nodded. They took the photo. It hit Instagram an hour later with the caption, My teacher taught me courage today. Not math, courage. The photos spread like fire. By noon, news vans were parked outside the school gates. Journalists crowded around the fence, shouting her name. Madame Assétou? Did the principal really say it? Are you filing a case? Do you have a lawyer? One reporter pushed her mic through the gate and said, Do you have anything to say to women who are body-shamed at work? Assétou stood at the school balcony, looking down at them. Sweat clung to her back. Her heart was thumping in her ears. But she stood tall. She said nothing. Not yet. Inside the principal's office, everything was chaos. Monsieur Doumbia had gone pale. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. District officials, his wife, a TV news anchor, even someone from the Ministry of Education. He slammed the receiver down, turned to his vice principal and hissed, She recorded me. That Jezebel, she set me up. Sir, they're saying they want to investigate, said the VP quietly. The ministry's spokesperson is on CNN Africa tonight. They're asking why we let it happen. He looked out the window at the press. We need to suspend her. Now. But it was too late. Across the country, students in different schools began posting pictures of their female teachers with hashtags like, Let women teach my body my job, she taught me more than books. University professor tweeted, My breasts never taught my students anything. My mind did. My voice did. My power did. Shame on any man who feels threatened by a woman's shape. Within 24 hours, protests began. It started with 3 girls outside the ministry gates in Plateau. They wore school uniforms and held handwritten signs. Her breasts can't talk, and why are you so scared? By the next day, they were joined by 50 more. By the weekend, it was thousands. Women marched with tape over their mouths. Some wore their old school uniforms. Some wore bras outside their clothes. All of them had one message. A woman's body is not a threat. Your silence is. Back at Lycée Moderne d'Abobo, Assétou sat alone in the library, scrolling through her phone in disbelief. Her face was everywhere. Her voice was now a national cry. She had been invited to appear on television. Lawyers were offering to represent her for free. Even her old university called her a symbol of resistance, but something inside her was trembling, not fear, not joy, something deeper, the ghost of shame, the years of shrinking herself, of hiding behind large coats, of praying every morning that no boy would say something rude, that no male teacher would accidentally brush against her in the hall, that no father would look her up and down at parent meetings. She had carried that shame for so long it had become a second skin. Now the skin was peeling, and it burned. That night, she finally responded. She sat on her balcony, with her phone propped against a tomato can. She wore no scarf, no makeup, just her voice. She looked into the camera and said, "My name is Assétou Koné. I am a teacher. I love teaching, but I was told I cannot teach because of my body, because of my chest, because men cannot control their eyes and women cannot control their tongues. They wanted me to disappear, to cut away parts of myself so I could be accepted. But I will not. I did not ask for this body, but I will not apologize for it. I will teach. I will not be silent anymore. And to every girl who has ever been made to feel ashamed for growing, for being, for existing, this is your fight too. Let them hear us." She posted the video with the caption, "Silence is the real distraction." In 6 hours, it hit 4 million views, but in the shadows of her rising fame, a different storm was brewing. The school board released a statement, saying the matter was under investigation, but local sources leaked that they had already drafted a dismissal letter. Parents, loyal to the principal, were organizing a petition to restore decency at the school. Anonymous numbers sent her messages at night. "You embarrassed your whole gender. You wanted attention. Now you've got it. We'll see how long you last." And still, she stood. The fire had already been lit. The morning was heavy with rain. Fat drops fell from a gray sky like tears that had waited too long to fall. The school courtyard, usually full of noise and laughter, was silent. A wet, waiting silence. Assétou sat in the staff room, alone, her hands wrapped around a metal cup of lukewarm tea. The school board had still not spoken to her. The ministry had gone quiet, too. What had started as a national cry now seemed to be turning into silence again. But a different kind of silence. One that meant danger. One that meant betrayal. Then the email came. Subject: Termination of contract. Effective immediately, sent at 8:02 a.m., signed by the regional education inspector. Her hand shook. Her breath caught in her throat. They didn't call her. They didn't meet with her. They didn't even speak to her lawyer. They had just removed her, like a stain on white cloth. And the reason they gave? Violation of school conduct through unauthorized recordings, misrepresentation of administrative discussions, and disruption of public order. That was it. No mention of her work, no mention of her excellence, no mention of his words. Just blame. Blame placed on her, the victim. As always. She stared at the screen, tears collecting in her eyes but not falling. Her mind was racing. This couldn't be how it ended. But then, something unexpected happened. A soft knock. She looked up. It was Miriam, her student, the one who had taken the photo days earlier. Her eyes were wide. Her breath was short. "Miss," she whispered, "they arrested a girl." "What girl?" "The one who led the protest at the ministry. The one who held the 'Her breast can't talk' sign. Her name is Chantal. They took her at night. Her parents said plainclothes officers came. Assétou's blood ran cold. But why?" she asked. Miriam swallowed hard. "They said, they're investigating who's behind all the protests. They think someone is organizing it from inside." The meaning dropped like a hammer. "They think it's me." 2 hours later, her lawyer arrived. His name was Monsieur Diabaté, a sharp but calm man with kind eyes and a file full of printed articles. "This is bigger than you now," he said, as they sat under a leaky umbrella outside the school's broken canteen. "They're scared. They want to bury this." "But they already dismissed me," she said, staring at the mud pooling at her feet. "They think if you disappear, the movement will die. They didn't expect the world to care this much. But we have one thing left." He opened a brown folder and pulled out a transcript. "The meeting recording. We sent it to a journalist at Jeune Afrique. She did some digging. Look at this." He passed the paper to her. There, printed in black ink, was the truth she didn't even know. This wasn't the first time. Principal Doumbia had transferred 2 other female teachers in the last 5 years, both for inappropriate appearance and distracting students. One had even written a letter, complaining about harassment from male staff. The letter had vanished. The woman had disappeared. No one spoke about it again, until now. Now, everything was coming into the light. That evening, the video dropped. It wasn't posted by Assétou. It was posted by Chantal's sister. A 2-minute montage of student protest clips, press headlines, and the audio of Principal Doumbia's voice, played over a beat made by a teenage DJ in Kokody. It ended with black screen text. "You silenced one. Now 10,000 are speaking. I am Assétou." It exploded. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, WhatsApp. Even foreign news stations picked it up. And then, the real twist. Late that night, Assétou's phone rang, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. The voice was soft. Female, older. "Madame Koné?" The voice said. "This is Minister Aminata Diarra." Assétou froze. "The Minister of Women and Family." "I wanted to speak with you privately before the cabinet meets tomorrow," the minister said. "I've listened to your recording. I've read the articles. And I want you to know, I believe you. The system is not clean, but this is your moment. We would like you to testify next week at the National Assembly." Assétou didn't speak for a long moment. Her world had been falling apart just hours ago. Now it was being rebuilt, one brick at a time. "I will." "Speak," she said quietly. And when she hung up the phone, she cried. Not from fear, not from shame, but from relief that her truth had finally been heard. But while she slept, Principal Doumbia made his final move. Early the next morning, just before dawn, a blurry video was posted online. It showed a woman, similar in shape and size to Assétou, dancing in a nightclub. The angle was dark. The lighting was poor, but the comments came fast. "Is this the teacher? See how she moves. No wonder boys can't focus. Hypocrite. She says she's a victim, but look at her." The smear campaign had begun. It spread like oil on fire. Screenshots, cropped faces, fake audio. Some said she had done nude modeling in university. Others said she used to date politicians. All of it lies. All of it noise. She woke up to find her phone shaking from notifications. Her email flooded with threats. Even her mother had received calls from concerned neighbors. She collapsed into a chair, heart racing, vision blurring. But just when she felt the shame creeping back in, Miriam came to her door, holding a sign. It said, "We don't care what they show. We know who you are. Assétou." Behind her stood 50 girls from her school, uniforms wet with sweat, eyes burning with truth. They had come silently to stand with her. That was when she knew. The fight wasn't over, but she was no longer alone. The hearing was set for Thursday morning. National Assembly. Plateau, Abidjan. Outside the gates, the crowd began gathering at dawn. Some came barefoot. Some came in school uniforms. Some came with their babies on their backs. But they all came for the same reason: to stand behind a teacher whose only crime was having a woman's body and a fearless voice. The sun had not yet risen fully, but the street was already alive with chants. I am Assétou. A woman's body is not a threat. Silence is the real distraction. TV cameras pointed in every direction. Journalists pushed through the crowd, notebooks in hand. Police officers stood along the gates, nervous but alert. They had seen many protests before, but never like this. Never so many women, so many girls, walking as one. Inside, the air was cold. The assembly room was wide, white-walled, and filled with dark wooden chairs. Ministers sat in silence, some with frowns, some with curiosity, some, only some, with empathy. Then the door opened, and Assétou walked in, not hiding, not shrinking, not wrapped in oversized clothes. She wore a simple white blouse. Loose but not baggy, her scarf was folded neatly across her shoulders, not used to hide her chest. Her eyes were clear. Her steps were strong. The hall went silent. She was called to the stand, and for the first time, the whole country would hear her voice. She looked down at the microphone. It looked small, like a child's toy, but she knew it carried weight. She took a breath and began. My name is Assétou Koné. I am a teacher. I am 29 years old. I have taught mathematics for 7 years. I've taught in schools with no windows, no fans, and sometimes no chalk. I have helped students pass exams they were told they would fail. But I was told I am not fit to teach. Not because I'm lazy. Not because I'm unqualified. Not because I broke rules. I was told I am unfit to teach. Because my breasts are too big. Murmurs passed through the chamber like wind through dry grass. She continued. They said I was a distraction. That boys stared too much. That men couldn't concentrate. That parents complained. So I wore baggy clothes. I hid myself. I made myself small. Still, it was not enough. Then the principal told me I should have surgery. To make my chest smaller. Or else, he said, I would lose my job. I did not agree. I recorded the conversation. I shared it online. Because I was tired of hiding. Tired of carrying shame that was never mine. And now, the shame belongs to the system that let this happen. Some ministers shifted in their seats. A few nodded. They tried to silence me. They dismissed me from my job. They spread fake videos. They called me names. But what they did not understand, she said, raising her voice just slightly, is that I am not alone. I am one of many. There are hundreds of Assétous in this country. Girls who are told to be quiet. Women told to cover themselves, not because they are indecent, but because others refuse to see them as human. My breasts are not weapons. My body is not a crime. My voice is not too loud. The real distraction is silence. And I refuse to be silent anymore. The room erupted in claps. Not everyone, but enough to make the walls vibrate. Outside, the crowd was already cheering. The days that followed moved fast. A government investigation was opened into all female teachers who had been unfairly transferred or punished for appearance-related concerns. The principal, Monsieur Doumbia, was suspended pending inquiry. The video of Assétou's speech hit 10 million views in 48 hours. It was translated into 5 languages. Women in Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and even South Africa began sharing their stories using the hashtag #YamAssétou. More protests followed. Peaceful, powerful, poetic. Girls began writing essays and poems about body shame, about their mothers, about their teachers. In one photo that went viral, a little girl stood holding a sign. When I grow up, I want to teach, like Miss Assétou. But even as her story rose, Assétou knew this was not victory. Not yet. She still had no job. She still received threats, and the weight of being a symbol was heavy. People expected her to speak, to lead, to represent them. But inside, she was still healing. Some nights, she sat alone, staring at her reflection, wondering if her body would always be the first thing people saw, wondering if her voice would ever be enough. One such night, her phone buzzed. It was an email. Subject: "We have a space for you." It was from a private girls' school in Yamoussoukro. They wrote, "We've been watching your journey. We believe our students need more than just textbooks. They need courage. Would you come teach mathematics in strength?" She cried reading it. She said yes. Her first day at the new school felt like a new life. Clean white classrooms, eager eyes, girls who already knew her name, who already saw her not just as a teacher, but as a living lesson. On the blackboard, she wrote, "Math is truth. So is your voice." She smiled, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel like she needed to hide. She stood tall, proud, fully herself. Months passed. The protest became a movement. The movement became a foundation. Assétou launched La Voix des Silencieuses, the voice of the silenced, a mentorship and legal support group for young women facing harassment in schools and workplaces. She spoke at conferences. She returned to her old university. She was invited to the African Union Summit to speak on education and gender rights. But through it all, she remained a teacher. Every day, she stepped into class, picked up her marker, and taught equations, because teaching was her gift, and dignity was her right. One afternoon, as the bell rang and her students packed their bags, a girl named Khadija stayed behind. She looked shy. About 13. Her voice was small. "Miss," she said, "my cousin wanted to quit school. Because boys said she was too grown. She cried every day. But then she saw your video," she said. "Maybe her body isn't a curse." Assétou knelt beside the girl, placed a hand gently on her shoulder, and whispered, "Her body is a miracle. Her voice is a flame. Tell her to keep going." Khadija nodded and ran off. Outside the window, the sun was setting. Orange spilled across the sky like fire. Another day done. But the story, her story, was just beginning, not the story of shame, not the story of silence, but the story of a woman who refused to cut herself to fit into a world that was too small for her strength. Woman who was told she was too much and proved them right, because too much courage can change the world, and it did.